Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Today I've got a really good summer and fall tip for you that is something a lot of people are doing, but the majority of anglers are not willing to try because it's somewhat intimidating. But I'm here to tell you guys, if you give this a try, you make this small adjustment to your spinner baits, you might find that it catches you some really big fish and saves the day on some of those really tough dog days of summer days. Before I do get into that though, I want to give you a little story regarding this. So I'm going to say it was probably 2 or 3 years ago. I was fishing an event on Smith Lake and I was talking to another angler in that event. And this was a spring event when I was there, but they talked about one of the best bites they'd ever been on in their life was a spinnerbait bite on Smith Lake for both giant spotted bass as well as very big largemouth. And we got talking about it and they said they were making one simple adjustment to their spinnerbaits. They were taking the rear blade, which is generally going to be probably a size 4 or a size 5 willow blade, and they were replacing it with a very large willow blade. One that you're talking about is a size 6 or a size 7, generally a 3 to 3.5 inch blade, if not even slightly bigger. So just for comparison sizes, you can, if I can get these to stop moving, you can see the difference. It is a dramatically different size blade. And the reason for this, the reason for going with a much larger back blade is it does a bunch of different things that your traditional spinnerbait blade will not do. The first is it gives off a much larger profile. So when you have a larger profile, you get more vibration, more flash, which increases the drawing power. Now, one thing I want to point out with this, now this is not something I necessarily do during the spring, but I love to do it during the summer in the fall, and part of that is because you have a lot more fish that are deeper, a lot more fish that are suspended, and because of that, that big blade does a much better job at drawing those fish from further away. So some of the areas where I really like to fish a bigger blade on the spinnerbaits is around standing timber, around bluff banks, around lay down trees, around some isolated targets. Maybe you're fishing some brush piles and some flats. And the key here is I'm not necessarily going to be bumping it through the cover as much as I am just bringing it over the top. But that large rear blade does a great job at allowing the fish to identify where the bait is, and it's bringing them to it. So when I was talking to that angler about Smith Lake, they were talking about how this was a simple adjustment they were making once the water started to get really warm during the summer months and all through the fall. And it was resulting in very, very big spotted bass and largemouth for them. Now, I got to tell you, back when this happened several years ago, I didn't have the opportunity to jump out on Smith Lake and try it. Now, about probably 6 months later, so that was probably, I'm going to say March, April, 6 months later, I was up north here. It was I was probably fishing in August. I had just talked to a buddy of mine who was fishing in the Ozarks region, crushing them on a giant bladed spinnerbait. They were replacing the standard willow leaf blade, rear willow leaf blade, and putting a size 7 on the back, and they were catching a ton of fish. And that reminded me of the conversation I had at Smith Lake. So I decided to try a big blade on my spinnerbait, and I went out to one of the lakes here in Wisconsin and proceeded to pound them, catching fish from deep humps, topped out 15 to 20 feet of water. I was bringing the spinnerbait back probably 5 to 10 feet down, and both largemouth and smallmouth were coming out of nowhere to eat the big spinnerbait. So it was an eye-opening experience for me. But since then, I've had a ton of success doing it, but it's not just me. This is one of those things I've probably had 5 or 6 conversations, just random conversations with other pros along the way in the last 2 or 3 years that have told me the exact same thing. And it really starts to ramp up in the summer months through the fall period, and it has to do with that bigger silhouette. And there's a couple of reasons for this. One, it's not just the drawing power, but more, this big blade does a very good job at mimicking the larger forage species that the bass are starting to key on in these summer months. So bass are cold-blooded creatures. Water temperature rises, their metabolism rises, they become much more active. And from that standpoint, they need to eat more, and it's generally easier for them to eat a larger meal than it is a bunch of small minnows. So a bigger profile bait in the summer months allows them to get that bigger meal, which is more nutrients for them, and therefore they don't have to expel as much energy by eating a lot of smaller things. The other thing to keep in mind is the shad species and a lot of the forage species, and I don't think this necessarily just mimics shad. I think it also does a good job at mimicking some of your more, sunfish and panfish species, your perch. I think if you got alewife or you got cisco, all of them are reaching larger sizes. So, if you had newborns that year or young of the year, they're now getting to more of a mature size. You've got the previous size fish that are getting bigger. So a lot of the forage species as a whole are also getting bigger. So not only are the bass more aggressive due to the warm water, they're looking for bigger meals, and their prey are generally getting bigger. So when you line that all up, a lot of times a bigger spinnerbait, when you replace the rear willow leaf blade to a size 6 and generally a size 7, has a lot more draw power and appeal to the bass. Whether it's largemouth, smallmouth, spotted bass, it doesn't seem to matter. But this is something that a lot of people are keeping on the down low. A lot of times it can actually be hard to find bigger blades. You might have to go to a specific tackle craft place like a Net Craft or Barlow's. I'll put a link, if I can find some at Tackle Warehouse, I'll put a link for it so you guys can go and check them out just yourself. But it really does make a big difference. And if you're struggling to catch fish, if you're looking to generate some bigger bites during the summer period into the fall, give it a try, guys. Replace your rear willow leaf blade with a very large, oversized willow leaf blade. A size 6, more likely a size 7. Those are generating a lot of bites for people, and it's making a very big difference. So give it a try. If you have done this and you've seen success, or you have done it and not seen success, let us know in the comment section. I'd love to hear from you guys too, to see if you're experiencing the same things that I am. And stay tuned, guys. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow for you. Thanks for watching.